Welcome to the third in our lecture series on the benefits of organic food. Today we're lucky to have two people, so I'd like to introduce them in order. This is Dr. Nicky Gonzalez. He's a teacher at De Anza. He's a student organizer and activist. He brought about wage changes, and he's someone that is very valuable to us because he's also a trustee. And this is our speaker for the day, and she is an expert in nutrition. Her name is Lisa Miller, is that right? Okay. And first, Dr. Gonzalez is going to talk to you just a little bit, and then we'll start our lecture series. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out today. I was told I had about 5 minutes to just sort of talk a little bit about what I do, and what I do is politics. I'm a community organizer. I teach politics. I'm the chair of the political science department down at Laney College. I'm on your board of trustees here, and I want to just talk about one key word here, and that word is strategy. What is strategy? Strategy is using what you have to get what you need to get what you want. Now, if you're in this room today, it's because you care about the direction that our civilization is going in. And we know that right now, if we do nothing, the planet that we hand over to our children will look very different than the planet we have right now. And I don't need to go into a lot of detail about the climate crisis, the environmental systems that are all in collapse. You know this already. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about power and strategy. Because if we do nothing, the world is set up right now so that the driving engine of the world is the profits and the capacity of corporations and very wealthy people to extract profits from our natural systems and from working people. We don't need to do anything for that to continue to happen. And if that continues to happen at the rate that it's happening, we will see the climate crisis that we've already begun to see exacerbate and collapse human civilization as we know it. The thing is, we are not without resources. Now, right now, the powers that be, have captured enough resources, extracted enough profits, and then put them into the exercise of political power that they continue to move this system towards collapse. But we are not without resources. Now, down at Foothill De Anza, we've had a group of students who, over the last 3 years, have done some kind of amazing work, earth-saving work that is groundbreaking. In the next month, the faculty senate at Foothill De Anza, at De Anza College, will be voting on a graduation requirement for all students that in order to graduate, they would need to take a class in environmental sustainability that also taught them how to be active global citizens, how to affect political change. Now, we have 2.5 million students in the community college system in this state. Imagine if every community college, all 113 community colleges in this state, required that students, in order to graduate, would have to know something important about the environmental systems that we're in, but then also they had to know something about how to affect political change. Think of what a different world we would have. So I want to come back to this question, this word, strategy. Using what we have to get what we need, to get what we want. As students and as faculty members, we have access to resources. What is our primary resource in the community college system? It's classrooms. It's learning. It's the assignments. A lot of you are here in this room because you're getting extra credit, because your instructors have said this is an important thing to do. Now, the students down at Foothill De Anza organized to go talk to faculty members to say, this is what we want. We want a planet that works for us. We want a future that works for us. As teachers, your responsibility and your desire is to help us learn. And what we want to learn is how to save this planet. And as a result of students organizing their resource, they were able to move our faculty senate, where they're putting this in front of a vote in front of our faculty senate in the next 2 weeks. Now, the other thing that they were able to do, and I'll just close up on this because I've got about 30 seconds, is that same group of students was able to organize other students to get our foundation board to be the first community college foundation board to actually divest itself from dirty carbon stocks. They did that by going to the foundation board and saying, look, as students, this is what we want for our future. And the people who are in charge of that foundation board listened. You have power if you will only exercise it. But that takes organization, it takes perseverance, it takes knowledge, it takes coming to things just like this. So I want to just thank you for turning out today. I want to ask you not to let this be the last thing that you turn out to. And the next time you come to one of these, bring 5 friends with you and don't leave without the determination to fight for your future and our future. Thank you very, very much.
So thank you for that setup. That was fabulous. I'm glad that people are here today to learn a little bit more about different aspects of nutrition. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Lisa Miller, and I am a certified nutrition consultant. So there's a couple different paths in the world of consulting. What I did is I went to Bowman College. Actually, after coming here to Laney, I took most of my chemistry classes here. Also, it was kind of spread across all of the Peralta colleges. So I'm very happy to come back. But I completed a holistic nutrition program at Bowman College, and that provided me the background that I needed to not only have the information, but be able to convey this to people. So I spend most of my time educating. I have my own consulting practice where I work with people one-on-one, and then I also I teach cooking classes. And I work at Kitchen on Fire. I'm a nutrition program director there. I have about 20 different nutrition-based classes, and you can see some of that information. It's a great way to share with the community, because if you learn about nutrition and organics, but you don't actually know how to put it into practice, it's a lot harder to make it part of your lifestyle. So that's one of the things that we focus on. So I'm going to get right into today's presentation. I'm going to need to be heading back here to flip the slides, so please forgive me as I bounce around a little bit. So the objectives for today. So basically what you want to do is we want to understand, I've already had a couple different series here, as I understand, about organics in general. We're focusing on the food impact, what that is actually doing to our body. So in order to direct that, we're going to look at if your body actually has that intelligence to know the difference of what's coming in. Also, why we should actually switch to organics if we actually do feel like there is a difference. Weighing the costs. Because organics, who here makes a choice at the grocery store based on price? Right? Absolutely. That's a reality that we have to look at. So we want to make sure that we understand when it makes sense to pay that price. When is it most important and where to start? Sound good? All right, so the first thing I want to do is actually define healthy. So when you think about healthy, what does that actually mean to you? There's a lot of things that we think about as far as like what healthy means, that I can go out and do the things I want to do. I can walk, and I can, feed my family and provide for my family and enjoy my life. And so that's really what it boils down to, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, what makes a healthy food supply, how we look at that, and choices that we can make. So as far as healthy, it's a state of wellness. So wellness is an overused word. It's something that there's wellness centers, all sorts of different things regarding wellness, but it really boils down to not having disease. So disease is always the things that we want to avoid, so that's what we're trying to step back to make sure that we're healthy. And becoming healthy indicates that you actually have a healthy lifestyle. That healthy lifestyle involves what you eat, right? Going back to that that catchphrase of you are what you eat, it's true, right? There's nothing more when we are born and then we grow into being adults. That is what makes us up. If we are at Burger King every day, that's what's creating us. So you want to think about, do you want those whole foods or do you want those other contaminants that are going into your system? Because that truly is what makes us up. So is there a difference as we think about organics and conventional? Because that's even more, that's a smaller element. That's the molecules. We're getting down to the very small pieces as far as what's actually in the food. So before we even try to answer that question, I want to tell you a little bit more about what organic means. So in general, organics, when you use that word organic, it seems healthy, right? It seems like it'd be a good thing. It also seems like organic food should be healthier, just because of that term. But there is a lot of debate about this topic, right? Even hospitals, you think hospitals would maybe have a standardized way of looking at things? They're on both sides of this. There are hospitals that completely ban the use of organics in especially certain aspects of the hospital. They're so concerned about whatever foreign matter that is in their food that they may not be able to control unless they have chemicals on there to suppress those other organic matters. Then there's the other way of looking at it, which there's hospitals that have their own farms, their own organic farms right on their property. So they've invested in not only the land, the people costs, everything it takes in order to grow their own food, because they're tired of trying to figure out what might be in the food that they're not aware of, and they want to give their patients the best thing. So as you can see, this is a really broad topic, and we need to figure out how to educate as well as possible. So organics. Organics, as far as a definition, is a tough one, but I'm just going to put it very simply. Basically, it means that we have to avoid synthetic chemicals and also GMO. Now, GMO is a whole other topic. Don't even have time to get to that today, but GMO is genetically modified organisms. So in order for something to be classified as organic, they need to state that they have avoided those modified organisms, as well as stayed away from synthetic chemicals. So the word synthetic is important because organics do use chemicals. Organic farmers do use chemicals. The difference is that they might be heavy minerals of some kind or other things, other compounds that are naturally occurring, blends of things that are naturally occurring rather than something that is made in a lab. One other thing is, as we think about the supporters of organics, we look at active nutrients in the food. We also look at the impact of those chemicals to not only the food, but then next when it gets to our body. So the conventional grower, these are basically 95 to even 99%, depending on who you talk to, as far as, is supplying the food for our country. The conventional grower, they're saying we need these chemicals. We are not going to be able to get the yields that we need, right? It's a business. Being a farmer, it's a business, and it's a tough business. Because if you have a drought year, or if you have some, something else that wipes it out, bad storms, maybe there's some kind of a bug that takes over and wipes out your orchard, you've completely not only had to spend money to start your crops, but you've made nothing. And then you also have the cleanup. So what they're saying is, hey, in order to stay in this business, if you want us to be able to supply food, we need those chemicals in order to prevent disaster. And also, of course, it's wiping out the weeds, which are getting in the way of the foods and other things. But really, it comes down to a financial decision of how to make sure that they have some kind of support so that they're not going to completely lose their crop for the year. And I understand that. I understand the argument. They're also saying that these chemicals have been tested. Small amounts are okay. That they, the acceptable levels, that's what they stay within. Everything is tested, so they're doing everything that they are told to do. So, basically quit fighting it, is their point of view. So very quickly, just looking at some thoughts on each side. I've talked about it a little bit, but now if we think a little bit about, okay, organics. Someone that's supporting organics, it'd say, you know what, everything should be natural. It's food. It's lettuce, it's apples. Why would I want anything on there? I want to eat this food as pure as possible. Also, that concern about chemicals. Sure, someone says it's good, or someone says it's okay, it's not going to hurt me. We've heard that before, right? We've heard that for decades when they've been talking about the fact that, you know, a chemical is okay, all of a sudden birth defects come out. We might not know about that for 10, 20 years, right? And investing the money to make sure that everything is completely proven, that's another tough one. So that brings me to fear of the unknown, right? We don't know what we don't know. So, and we never have assurance on these things. So that's why they're saying, hey, let's just be conservative and not push the limits of saying that these chemicals going to our system is okay. And then the body has to combat these toxins. We're going to talk a little bit more about that once anything enters the system, how our body actually operates in order to work through it. So then there's the other side of the argument. So on the conventional side, for conventional, we've talked a little bit about this, right? So chemicals are used on everything, right? So quit, you know, basically giving us a bad time about using chemicals. They're on organics too. It's just a matter of which chemicals. So let's start looking at the individual chemicals rather than, you know, getting mad at us for using chemicals. And then the fact that they are tested, as I said before, and also that these chemicals help in many respects. So what they're saying is those are keeping down disease in not only the food, they're preventing disease in water, in soil. So it's basically, right, it's the flip side of the coin as far as the argument, but that's what their point of view is. And then also they're saying there's no proof of the loss of nutrients. And this is really what we're talking about today, is the nutrients and what's actually going into your body. So, you know, there's a bigger issue, and I'm glad that they're looking at things for the program so that we can actually make sure that everyone has an understanding about sustainability and the effect on our entire environment. But today what we're trying to get to is that very specific topic of, are these healthier? When I eat an apple that's organic versus eating an apple that's conventional, what is the difference? How does my body react? And am I actually healthier at the end of the day if I eat the organic? So the burden of proof, right? So we know about any kind of legal system, there's always a burden of proof. We need to make sure that someone has said justifiably that one thing is right or wrong. So this is expensive, right? So when you think about the cost and who's going to actually fund these things, there's a lot of people that will fund big business, right? Chemical companies are very large. They're tied back into the oil companies and everything else. There's a lot of support. So if they feel like they might lose the ability to do what they do, sell the chemicals that they're selling, all the machinery that goes along with them, that's something that they need to defend. There's no one defending celery and carrots and, you know, all these foods. That's the natural side of it, and that's why we need to make sure that we have somebody to help. But that's an issue as far as making sure that we have complete studies long enough, wide enough to actually prove to the community to make people make a change. Right now what we're changing is based in a grassroots fashion. You know, individuals going out and trying to speak what they understand about the effect that it's having on a society. But it's hard to make that leap over into really changing everything until we have some kind of legal structure or something that's going to actually help us on that fight. So at this point, we're having to still educate, and that's what I focus on, is trying to educate people. I'm happy to open up that debate with individuals to make sure that we have the best understanding possible. So this gets into that, you know, the crux of the issue today. So they are not disputing, no one is disputing that all these chemicals cause issues. The argument is that we're using such little amounts that it's okay. So that's the thing, it's like when it's your kids or your own body, really, is it okay to have some if you know that a lot is actually causing neurotoxicity, nerve system disorders, hormonal disorders, early abortions, immune system disruption, intestinal damage, and even more things that have been proven. Okay, so this gets into if your body actually knows the difference. So a couple examples that I provided were, okay, you see this beautiful platter of food. You know, the waxed apples that might have been in cold storage for, 36 months or so. The colorful salad, it can look beautiful, even though it has those chemicals. Those can fool the eye, but not the gut. So when I'm talking about the gut, that's your digestive system, your ability to actually absorb nutrients. So when we actually look at foods and they're coming in, when we look at chemicals coming into the body, the first thing they have to do is the chemicals are going to get absorbed into your food. Then you're going to decide what things you're actually going to eat. So if we first look at the food, so toxins are designed to program to kill. Right? They're going to say, well, they're trying to kill the little microorganisms. They're trying to kill the insects that are eating the plants, right? Because that's going to bring down the yield. They're trying to kill any of the bacteria that might damage the trees or things like that, right? So they're programmed to kill. So then we look at the nutrients. So nutrients are the smallest element. Those are the molecules, are these nutrients. So if you have something that's programmed to kill, why wouldn't they be killing the nutrients? I mean, unless you can prove it wrong, I would have to say that it would, it's going to be damaging that. So that's what we're looking at today is there enough information? Is there enough support just looking at it from a logical perspective? Because obviously getting into the debates on across all the different chemicals is a much longer discussion than what we have time for today. So as we look at nutrients and what they're doing in your body, any of those nutrients that are coming in, let's say they're alive. Let's look at it actually from a completely neutral perspective. Let's say both of those apples, the organic and the conventional, let's say they both have the same number of nutrients coming in. Now you've eaten the one that's conventional. Those nutrients, those are the energy for your system. What they need to do is, first thing is, do the cleanup to get all those toxins out of your body before they can start helping you grow, helping you run that marathon, helping you think clearly for your next exam, whatever it is that you want them to do that day. Those energy, those basically nutrients, that is creating the energy to fuel your body. If those things are deterred over to clean up, taking care of toxins, then you have that much less that's there in your system. So that's kind of a simple way of looking at it. I'm just trying to get back down to the basics of it today. So if you look at your system, this is where I focus. This is really where I come into play as far as really teaching people what's going on in their system, whether it's a disease we're looking at that day, whether it's different types of foods. So a toxin enters your body. That can be disrupting the digestive system right off the bat. These things have been taught, that they've been trained to kill microorganisms, bacteria, and all that. What's in your gut? Absolutely. So you have tons and tons. Why do people take probiotics and eat yogurt? That's to build up those bacteria. We actually are trying to introduce more bacteria into our system because we know that that's what we need to help us actually break down our foods. So we talk about the good bacteria, the bad bacteria. I don't know exactly what those toxins are killing. And they don't really know exactly because they aren't even geared to kill the ones in your gut, but it's going to happen. And so also it can mess with the acid balance ratio in your stomach, which also impacts your ability to break down foods. So the next thing is that those things will travel down through your system and they get from your stomach, now they go into your small intestine. Your small intestine is where things actually break through the walls. Right, the intestine walls are like this. It's tight junctions. What they do is if something comes in that's foreign to it, they'll open up. They want to get this thing out. So things that shouldn't go outside of your body and outside of your digestive tract, you want these things to pass through your small intestine, go into your colon, and go out. But what's going to happen is these things will actually be rejected out into your system, opening up those tight junctions, and now you not only have the toxins in your digestive system, they're now going into your liver and other parts of your body. So you've basically compounded that proliferation throughout your system. The other thing is as I mentioned previously, the nutrients are now redirected. Hey, wait, I can't help build you, I can't help energize you. I'm in here in damage control working on getting these toxins out of your system. Inflammation. Has anyone heard of inflammation? I have a whole class that I teach just on anti-inflammatory living. It's basically, inflammation is a wound on the inside. So, when you scratch your arm and it's red or gets swollen, you know, something, you get a bee sting, that your body naturally becomes inflamed. What it does is that's the healing mechanism. So as these toxins will go inside your body, what happens is that they will cause inflammation because it's a foreign thing. So we're going to try, so they're going to bring blood supply in there, that's going to, you know, it can do all sorts of different things. It's going to cause immune reactions. And basically what that does is that's going to cause another issue for your body to have to solve. Inflammation is a good thing, but you have too much of it, it leads to autoimmune diseases, diabetes, arthritis, a whole multitude of different things. Other thing is weight gain or weight loss. So someone can have a reaction to something, it might cause them to gain weight. For example, I know people that are, it's not even a toxin to everybody, but think about a food, gluten. You guys heard of gluten? Gluten is a protein in wheat. Some people are sensitive. Some people are so sensitive that it will send them to the hospital if they eat this gluten. So if you actually consume the gluten, it could cause the fact that your body's going to say, you know what, I am going to protect you. I'm going to wrap that toxin in a fat layer and store it off, which is why they say this adipose tissue, any weight gain around this area, is the most hazardous because it's actually the part that probably has toxins within your system that have been saved off. Just like the concept of beer belly, right? Other people now have nicknamed it the wheat belly. Beer often has gluten. Could there be a relationship? But anyway, this is all leading back to something that's a toxin to your body, whether it's a food that for some reason you're allergic to, or it's one of these chemicals. Either way, it's something your body has to spend its energy working on in order to deplete and take care of your system. Okay, so I was talking a little bit about this already. So what is toxic to your body? So the fact that actually things that are nutrients, things I mentioned like the gluten, it's a protein, it actually could be considered a toxin to your body. The actual toxins themselves, the chemicals, synthetic chemicals, obviously are toxic to your body. Damaged nutrients. So that's another thing, is if you have nutrients that have been mutated in some way, or you've overcooked your oil. Anyone cook and all of a sudden you realize, wow, I forgot the pan was too hot, now the oil is smoking off. All those nutrients are now damaged. That's going to also cause issues with your body. It's something else you have to clear out. Allergens, so any type of thing, even if it's you're allergic to, you have hay fever, right? Grasses are sensitive to you. That's another thing that stresses your body. So there's a whole bunch of things that we actually have to deal with. Why add more, basically? So you have a buildup of different things that happen. I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, it's just because I'm 40. Everything's kind of wearing out. Got a lot of aches and pains, getting a little weight gain. It's actually what it is that it's like this, you know, this bucket that gets fuller and fuller. And it's all these things that you can handle when you're young. You can handle not sleeping too much, which is probably good when you hit exam time, right? You can handle the fact that you can skip meals once in a while and you're still okay. But it adds up after time. So there's no way that we can go back and say, you know what, it was that apple that didn't have enough nutrients that caused the issues that I have today. But if we do everything that we can to always prevent these things happening, anything that's controllable, you want to try to control or lessen the impact of your body. So the next slide, I'm going to give you a little bit of information just about this example. I talked a little bit about gluten. It just happens to be the nutrient that I'm picking on today. But if you think about something about contaminants, so this could be that pesticide that's in apples, or this could be gluten, right? This happens to be gluten. I pulled this from another slide that I talked about it. But basically, if you eat a bagel for breakfast, it's got wheat that has gluten. Your body's not feeling too good, and so then what happens is then it goes into your stomach, it causes a reaction, goes in your small intestine doesn't like it, then as I was mentioning before, those tight junctions have opened up. That gluten, which is a very large protein molecule, goes into your system, and then it can cause autoimmune issues. It can actually cause you to have your throat, actually close so that you have to go to the hospital if you're celiac. It could cause weight gain. The other of course, it can also cause weight loss because of the stress on your system. So if you have your bagel in the morning, then you have your sandwich at lunch, then you have a beer at dinner, you're never letting your system actually get over it. So that same thing can be true as we look at eating one apple that has some contaminants in it. You know what? Your body can actually get through that just fine. You know, we're all living. It's amazing how many things we can live through. But if you continue to have that apple and then you have those grapes that are also contaminated at lunch, and then you know, it's like you continue on this cycle, you never give your body the chance to relax and to recover and to actually close up the gut again and be able to actually break down the nutrients correctly and think about all the good things that it needs to do to heal your body. So these are the things that you don't notice. As I've said, you don't notice them right away. They build up. And then over time is when they show up. This next slide is just a few examples of some things that happen. Rashes, skin tags, redness, bloating. We've covered a few of these. Just one specific example, I have a client that is in college, so she's 22. She is trying to struggle, you know, she's struggling with a few things. Mainly it's energy, you know, making sure that she can she wants to lose a few pounds, but it's mainly on the energy, focus, making sure she has a clear mind, because she's noticed that there's been a change and she's actually feeling like things are getting to her and things are, you know, she's not feeling as good as she used to. And she's like, you know, I'm 22. I'm way too young for this. So we cleaned up her diet. We got rid of all that. We actually went completely organic, as close as she could go. She happens to be in New York. That's another big area with a lot of organics available, right? You have lots of possibilities. But then she went and had sushi one day. All of a sudden had a horrible reaction. Turns out, once we peeled it back, then she had something else that also had red coloring. It was the coloring in the salmon that actually gave her that reaction. Because after we actually went through a couple of these things, then she actually went and got the allergen test to confirm. So it's like these things come at us from all sorts of different places. We need to make sure that we're aware and we try to be really observant of what's happening in our body and not just accepting them, going to get that extra cup of coffee or going on some kind of crazy crash diet because we feel like, wow, our weight is, you know, creeping up every year, but yet, you know, we think that going on a, I don't know, liquid diet for a month is going to make a difference in the long term. So any of those things kind of resonate as far as things that occur in your lives and sometimes have some effect and you're really not sure what, but you keep going. So all of this is what I call the perfect storm. I know there was a movie about the perfect storm, which is all the years ago, and it was a bunch of storms actually coming together. But that's what I look at as far as actually being the perfect storm, is that it can be that, you know what, you have these conventional chemicals coming into your system. Then you also don't have enough sleep because it's finals. And then you also have the fact that you're skipping lunch because, there's really not that much around to eat, and so I can just go until dinner. Throwing your blood sugar off all day long. So all these different things, they all seem small, but then they add up. And this is what actually stacks up in your system and prevents you from being as healthy as you ever would have been. So I've talked a lot about kind of what's going on in your body, the things that can affect it. There's a lot of different things. It's a fine-tuned machine. It can take a lot, but we want to do everything that we can to try to make it as healthy as possible. So if we look at this debate, as far as the damage that's going on, right? We know that there's damage occurring to the soil, water, food supply, and also what's going on with our children and also farmers. So a couple groups that they actually have done some pretty thorough studies on include children, the effect of chemicals on children, because as you can imagine, when they are forming and their brain is forming, there's going to even be a higher reaction to some of these chemicals. And then there's the farmers who are working with them on a daily basis. They actually have higher contamination levels because they're not only consuming the food, but they're living it, right? They're in the air and dust and everything else around them, so that it intensifies. All right, so why do we consider the switch? Is there enough proof to at least put a question in your mind? Just looking at the general ideas, that's what we're trying to get to. And we need that question to be in enough people's mind to think, okay, if I'm questioning this, and now at least it makes you ask the questions, make some of the chemical companies really try to push to defend themselves or back down. So, and that's where we have to make sure that we have a voice. So the industry claims, obviously, that, you know, it's really not a threat to public health. They say little threat. I don't know. For me, I don't want a threat to public health. I don't want a threat to my health or my family's health. Almost everyone in the U.S., you know, we have pesticides in our blood. So they're okay. People are okay. That's not an argument to me to continue the process. The effect of the exposure to various pesticides aren't disputed. Okay, so we understand that. But the long-term effects of the minute residues, that is the dispute. Some people say that that's okay to have a little bit for a long period of time, but yet we actually do not have any scientific evidence to help us prove our argument that the chemical companies have bought yet. And that's why we're still in this dilemma of 99% of the growers still using chemicals. Okay, so a couple things. There's a lot of words on this page, but really what it is I just want to talk to you a little bit about a couple of the supporting societies or groups on the organic side. So the Endocrine Society. The Endocrine Society has been looking at the hormonal impacts of different things on our food system and our bodies since 1916. Okay, this group is almost 100 years old. So basically, it is a very well-respected, large organization that looks at all these impacts. You think of hormonal, that's autoimmune, a whole bunch of different things that are affecting actually the inner workings of our system. So what their concern is that in some cases, for some of these chemicals, a low dose can actually be more powerful and more damaging on our system, which is the actual complete contra-argument of what we have from the chemical companies. Then also looking at the Agricultural Health Study, this is a group that actually is out there to support the farmers because of the fact that the farmers are the ones that are most seriously impacted by these chemicals, indicating all the effects as far as their cancer, their rates of cancer, they're much higher than the general public. So now I'm coming back to cost. So we presented a lot of things. You know, it may not be that convincing thing as far as every single study that's cited, and if you do want to have information regarding some of these studies, feel free to, I have my email and everything else here, you can contact me and I'd be happy to give you some references for some of the things that support the argument for going organic. But let's now look at, now that if there's a question in your mind, most hands were raised earlier as far as if cost is one of the decisions that you are the elements that helps you make a decision at the shelf as far as what to buy. So the organic prices, the prices are actually, the gap is getting smaller. People are now demanding to have organic. They want to have it as an option. So that is a consideration, that the gap is actually getting smaller. In some cases it's doubled, like, you know, avocados, for example, an avocado is double. But also if you look at other items such as apples, they're usually a little closer, you know, maybe 20% difference. It really kind of depends, but it's basically the gap in general is closing in. And then it's things that are going to help shrink that gap. Making organic the conventional choice. So if we don't buy as much of the conventional and they're buying more of the organic, then it's actually, the prices are going to start to come together. Also, you know, just really have to stand for that safe and affordable food. If we know that our grocery store is not going to want to buy huge, you know, amounts of bulk apples that are conventional, now they're going to look for better pricing and actually focus their store and their marketing all about organic. That's going to draw people to their store. It completely changes their business structure. But that's what we can do individual by individual. And the other thing is don't just buy the beautiful fruit. This is one of the arguments for the conventional growers is, you know what? People won't buy the ones that has a little wormhole or that's a weird shape or that has some browning on one side for whatever, you know, fruit it is, fruit or vegetable. You have to understand that fruit is natural. If you want it to be natural, it's natural. It might not look perfect. Once you cut it up and put it in that fruit salad, who cares? So, you know, as they have to toss out all the things that look imperfect, that's actually raising the cost, and it's deterring more growers from going organic. Also, the fact that we need to make sure that we buy more often. Going to the grocery store just once every week or 10 days, that's not enough to actually hit your fresh organic produce. Organics actually will, you know, in some cases they're not going to last as long. They are fresh, and also those nutrients inside, if you're going to spend the money for organics, those nutrients start to be lost as soon as they're picked from the tree. You want them as soon as possible. So go frequently, buy what's there. Don't just buy that one beautiful, you know, the beautiful ones. Be that consumer that's going to help bring those prices down. Make sure that they can sell everything in that bin for organic fruit. And then also buy seasonally, right? It's a lot harder to have organic fruit out of season. Also the fact that you're not going to be bringing it in from Mexico because it's not going to last that long, things like that. So that's another consideration. And then the bigger price issue. Just want to make sure, I know we have about 10 more minutes. So the bigger price issue is spending on food. Do you want to spend on food, or do you want to spend it on your health care? Even on spending on coffee. Think about having to get that morning cup and then that afternoon cup. Get more nutrients in. Get some, you know, pomegranate juice. Get some of these other things that are actually, instead of looking at that price of that juice going, oh my gosh, it's $3 for that little thing of juice. Well, who went to Starbucks this morning and spent $3.50 to get their, or even up to $5 to get their whatever specialty pumpkin latte, right? We don't think about it because we've been trained to think that that's okay now. So you want to invest back on those nutrients instead. And then also it's going to, of course, support, you know, the rest of the environment as well. So very briefly, I'm going to run right ahead. So there is a group called EWG, Environmental Working Group. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. They have a list called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So you can get a little pocket guide right on the website, www.ewg.org. And I've also provided the list here on the next slide. But basically the idea is you want to make sure that you are making your choices with an educated point of view as far as when it's actually going to be most heavily contaminated or not. So for instance, the Dirty Dozen, I've mentioned apples and celery a couple times. Those are at the top. Some of those apples that are in the conventional side, those actually have up to 10 or more in different pesticides that have been traced even on one sample. And then also the levels. So EWG looks at, I think at this last year's study, they do it every year, was 32,000 samples that they did in order to get their list of the top 50. So they look at the cleanest, and then they look at the ones that are the most contaminated. So on avocados, don't buy the expensive organic avocados if price is a concern, right? Those are pretty clean. But celery and apples, blueberries, some of those other things, just don't buy it unless you can actually get the organic. So I have the list here, and if anyone does want this presentation, I can send that to you. So just again, email me, and I have my business cards up here, and I can send you this. You can have this list. Okay, great. So it sounds like we're going to be able to post it on the sustainability website, so you'll all have access to it. Great, thank you. So just one example. If you're looking at these foods and you're saying, gosh, you know what, the thing that I'm going to be facing is, you know, I want potatoes for dinner tonight. I want potatoes for dinner. Those are on the Dirty Dozen side. There aren't any organic ones available. So you can look at, okay, what are my options? I can go for sweet potatoes. They're on the Clean 15. I can buy the potatoes that are non-organic, and then peel them. Lose a few nutrients, but maybe it'll save some. But one of the considerations is there are insecticides and pesticides in the water, in the seeds, and sprayed on the vegetables or fruits, depending on which crop we're looking at. So peeling isn't always the solution, nor is washing. Now definitely, Wash, always wash, no matter what it is, organic or not. But that's not always going to solve the issue. All right. So the last slide. So this is things to keep in mind. The food is intended to build and repair your body. Your body needs to spend that energy for actually repair and not wasting those elements on actually on fixing other things that are coming into your system. So use your voice as you go to the grocery store. If they don't have the organics you need, ask for them. If they do have them, buy them if you can. Make the right choices based on those lists. If you can afford it, then go ahead and buy them. We want to make sure that we support. Even if you're not buying a lot, buy some of it. But the thing is that if you're looking at a choice and you're like, you know what, apples, I have to buy organic. Well, then instead of having apples that day, have something else, right? Have something that's off of that Clean 15 list. I don't want you to go away from natural whole foods because you're trying to make a buying decision. Your processed foods are going to have all those contaminants in them as well, unless you buy organic. So go instead, choose the things that have less contaminants in order to save your system. Because you definitely cannot just, avoid the situation. We definitely want to make sure that we address it as much as possible. Okay, so that is it for me for today. I'm going to...